بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Welcome back, my dear students, to today's English lesson. What are we going to do in this lesson? Let's take a look. So we are still in Unit 3. Today's lesson is form, meaning, and function. Let's take a look. What are we going to do? So we are at the last step here in Unit 3. So what are we going to do in form, meaning, and function lesson? But before we go to the lesson, I want you to go to the previous homework. What did you do in your homework? You were asked to do this. I wanted you to look at the picture and then write about something. I wanted you to answer this question and write about the picture, the occupation in this picture as mentioned in the last lesson. So, look at the picture. What do you see here? Who is this person? What is his job? What does he do? And then answer these questions. What does he do? Where does he work? Look at the things around this person. Do you see any tools? Now, let's see, what did we write here? This is a salesperson. He works in a sports shop. He likes his job because he loves sports. Now, let's take a look. The occupation of this person is a salesperson. But for the second question, where does he work? Look at the things around him. Do you see these balls and hats, sport things? He works in a sports shop. He likes his job. Why? What is the reason? Because he loves sports. We use the word because to give a reason. Now, let's take a look at today's lesson. What are the objectives of this lesson? The form, meaning, and function. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to use relative pronouns to add information. What are relative pronouns? And the second thing, we want to use who, that, and which to combine clauses. Let's take a look here. What do you see in this picture? What is the occupation of this person? What do they do? What is their job? By looking at the tools, you can see a doctor. This is the doctor. This is the doctor. Let's take a look. This is a sentence. This is the doctor. Now, here we have another sentence. The doctor treats people. The doctor treats people. Now, can we combine these two sentences in one? Are we going to keep repeating the same words? So this is the doctor treats people. Is there another way to say both of the sentences in one? Yes, maybe like this. This is the doctor who treats people. The doctor and treats people. So the first part here in the sentence, this is the doctor, we mentioned it here. What does the doctor do? Treats people. We added it here without repeating the word the doctor. This is the doctor who treats people. In today's lesson, we want to know, what is the word who? Why are we using the word who? Let's take a look. But before we go to the word who, let's take a look at the clauses. What is the meaning of clauses? Listen, all clauses contains a subject and a verb. If you see a sentence with a subject and a verb, we call it a clause. But we have two kinds of clauses. We have independent clause, or the main clause, and we have dependent clause. This is the independent. It's a strong clause. It's the main clause. And we have dependent. It needs the independent clause to hang on it. It's like the mommy clause and the baby clause. It needs to catch on it. So this is the independent clause is also called the main clause. The dependent one, the one that needs the other one, it's called subordinate clause. Subordinate, it needs support. Let's take a look here. We have this example. My uncle works in a factory which makes cars. Now, we can use two sentences. My uncle works in a factory and the factory makes cars. But instead of using two sentences, we combine them in one and we use the word which. We use the word which. Let's take a look at other words. We saw the word who, which. Now let's take a look at this chart and understand more. Relative pronouns. So we have three words in this lesson. We have who, that, and which. When are we going to use the word who, that, and which? We will use who to talk about people. Do you remember the example? This is the doctor who treats people. The doctor is a person, so we will use the word who for people. Now, what about the relative pronoun that? We will use it for people, things, and animals. We can use it for everything. What about the last one, the word which? Which we will use it for things and animals. We can't use it for people. So a relative clause, also we called it the adjective clause, describes the noun that comes before. So let's take a look here. This is the noun. My uncle works in a factory. This is the noun here is the factory. But which makes cars. So this is the description of the factory. This is something that the factory, something that is done in the factory. My uncle works in a factory. What's in the factory? Which makes cars. Let's take a look at more examples here. The first one, we are using the word who and that. We want to use it correctly. So we have here two sentences. We want to combine these two sentences. We want to use one of these pronouns. Who, that, or which. We will look at the noun and see which one is suitable for the sentence. We have here, the waiter is serving the customers. The waiter is serving the customers. He is friendly. Now, look at the second clause. He is friendly. Who's friendly? The waiter. The waiter is friendly. The waiter is a person. So, what are we going to use? We will use either who or that. We can use who and that. We can use who or that to talk about people. But we can't use which only for things or animals. So, it's going to be like this. The waiter who is serving the customers is friendly. Or we can say the waiter that is serving the customers is friendly. Look at the first sentence here. The waiter is serving the customers. It's in green. So this is the independent clause. You can understand the meaning of this clause alone. He is friendly. So if I write it here, is friendly, does it make sense? Does it have a meaning? No, that's why we need, this is called a dependent clause. So if you hear this sentence, the waiter is serving the customers. It is good. This is a well-formed sentence. But what if I say is friendly? What is friendly? That's why you need one of these words. Who or that? Because here we are talking about the waiter. The waiter who is serving the customer is friendly. See? It makes sense now. How about the other words here? Let's take a look at another example. My uncle works in a factory. My uncle works in a factory. I can understand the sentence. The factory makes cars. I can understand the sentence too. But here we have the word the factory. The word factory 2 times. we don't want to keep repeating the words. We want to combine these two clauses together in one sentence, and we want it to give a meaning. Let's take a look. My uncle works in a factory that or which makes cars. So do you remember the chart? We use that and which for people. We don't use it for people. We use it for things or animals. So here we're talking about the factory. The factory is not a person, it's a thing. So we are going to choose either that or which. My uncle works in a factory which makes cars. Now, let's take a look at another example, or I want to show you something here. My uncle works in a factory. This is a sentence with a meaning. But when I say makes cars, it doesn't have a meaning. That's why we call this dependent clause. It's depending on the other clause in green. Now, let's take a look at this example here. Write what each person does. Use who or that. Now, because we are talking about people, we'll write what each person does. We're talking about people here. We are using either who or that. We can't use which is for animals or things. Now, civil engineer. Civil engineer. Now we want to talk about civil engineer. So, what are we going to use? We can choose either who or that. All fine. Now, a civil engineer is someone who designs roads and bridges. Now, listen to this example. A civil engineer is someone, right? But when I say designs roads and bridges, who designs roads and bridges? It doesn't make sense. So this is a dependent clause that it's depending on this clause. So a civil engineer is someone who designs roads and bridges. Now, let's take a look at this one. I want you to try to do it yourself. I'll give you a minute to think about it, then we will check. Nurse. So we will use the same thing, but we are going to do the same thing with the example nurse. Here we explained a civil engineer is someone who what? How about nurse? You can choose who or that. You can use both of these, either one of these words, but you can't use which. A nurse is someone who takes care of sick people. Let's see, where's the dependent clause and the independent clause? A nurse is someone, okay, who takes care of sick people. When I say a nurse is someone, okay, but someone who what? Takes care of sick people. When I say a sentence, takes care, who takes care? There is no subject. But the subject is already here in this sentence, in the first clause, the independent clause. A nurse is someone who takes care of sick people. Now, I want you to try to do the second one yourself. I'll give you a minute to think, and let's check together. Pilot. What does a pilot do? A pilot is someone who what? Let's check. A pilot is someone that flies airplanes. Now, let's take a look. Where's the dependent clause and the independent clause, and which relative pronoun do we use? A pilot is someone, okay, that does make sense. A pilot is someone. We have a subject and we have a verb. A pilot is someone that flies airplanes. When I say flies airplanes, who flies the airplanes? So the subject is here in the first clause, the independent clause, a pilot. A pilot is someone that flies airplanes. That. The next one, travel agent. Do you remember the jobs we talked about at the beginning of the unit? A travel agent. What do they do? Try to do. Choose who or that. Now let's take a look. A travel agent is someone who organizes tours. Who organizes tours. Let's take a look at the first part here. A travel agent is someone, okay, who organizes tours. When I say organizes tours, who organizes tours? It's in the first clause, in the independent clause, the travel agent. A travel agent is someone who, or you can use that, organizes tours. Now, let's take a look at the next examples here. We have waiter, journalist, and graphic designer. Think about it. So, what does a waiter do? A waiter is someone that serves food in a restaurant. We use the word that. So when I hear this clause, serves food in a restaurant, who does that? A waiter. A waiter is someone that serves food in a restaurant. Now, let's take a look at the next one. Journalist. Journalist. A journalist is someone who writes for a newspaper. We use the word who. Now, how about graphic designer? So what can we use for graphic designer? We want to use it. Use who or that. A graphic designer is someone that makes advertisement. That makes advertisement. See? When we used who or that, both of them are relative pronouns we can use to talk about people. What do we have here next? We want to complete the sentences with who or which. Who if we're talking about people, which if we're talking about things. Let's take a look here. The neighbor, something, lives downstairs, is a chef. So the neighbor lives downstairs, is a chef. So when I say lives downstairs is a chef. So what do I use to make this sentence a well-formed sentence? The neighbor, we're describing the neighbor. Can we use, which one are we going to use? Who or which? We're describing someone. The neighbor who lives downstairs is a chef. Now, this one is a bit tricky because this is a question. It has the same idea, but in a form of a question. Is English a language something easy to learn? What are we going to use? Who or which? Is English language. So we're talking about English language. Is it a person or a thing? Is English language which is easy to learn? Is English a language which is easy to learn? So we use the word which to describe or talk about the language. Now, the next one, would you like a job? Something has a large salary. So we're describing a job. What are we going to use? Which relative pronoun? Who or which? We're talking about a job. A job is a thing. It's not a person. So we are going to use which. Would you like a job which has a large salary? Now, let's take a look at the next sentence, and I want you to try to say it before I do. My brother works in a store, something, sells furniture. So, which one is the subject here? Is it my brother or the store? What are we talking about? My brother or the store? Let's take a look. My brother works in a store, something, sell furniture. Which? Why? We're talking about the store. The store sells furniture. So my brother works in a store which sells furniture. Now, let's take a look at the next examples. Look at the subject here, and so we can decide which one are we going to use. Who or which? The salesperson, something, helped me, was very friendly. The salesperson. Salesperson is a person. So people, that's why we are going to use who. Now the next one. The actor, something, is playing the lead role, is very funny. We're talking about what? The actor. Who? We used who because we're talking about the actor. Now, the next one here. He works for a construction company which builds roads and bridges. Why did we use which? Because we are talking about what? The construction company. It's not a person, it's a thing. A construction company. That's why we use the word which. Now the last one. The graphic designer, something, made this advertisement, is very creative. Now we're describing what? The advertisement or the graphic designer here? The graphic designer who made this advertisement is very creative. The graphic designer, we're describing the graphic designer. That's why we used who. Now, let's take a look at the next thing here we have. We want to complete the sentences with your own ideas. Now, we have three relative pronouns, who, that, and which. Let's take a look at this question and see. We have the relative pronouns here, but what's going to be the rest of the sentence? Now, complete these sentences with your own ideas. Number one, I like people who are. So, I like people who are. We're talking about the people. How can we describe the people? What do you like about people? We can say, I like people who are polite and friendly. Qualities about people, right? Number two, I don't like people that are, a quality that you don't like. So, actually you can use who or that to talk about people, right? I don't like people that are impolite, the opposite of polite, impolite. I don't like people that are impolite. So this is a bad quality that we don't like in people. Now, the last one, I like books which are what? How can we describe the books? Because we have the word which. It's describing the book, right? We want something to talk about the book. I like books which are exciting, exciting. I like books which are exciting. Now, we want to complete the sentences the same way as this. But I'll give you a minute to think about it. I don't like books that are what? Describing the books. Boring. I don't like books that are boring. Now, the next one. I want a job which is what? We have which to describe the job. We want a quality about the job. Satisfying. I want a job which is satisfying. That makes me feel good, right? The next one. I don't want a job that is what? Something that you don't want in a job. Stressful. Actually, so I don't want a job that is stressful. Here, this is a quality about the job. But decide the things that you like and don't like about a job. The things that you can do in the job and things that you can do with the job. Now let's take a look. What did we do in today's lesson? What did we learn about? So we used relative pronouns to add information. And we used who, that, and which to combine clauses. Now, what did we use these for? We used who to talk about people. We used that to talk about people, animal, or things. And we used which to talk about things or animals. Now, for your homework, What are you going to do? Write what each person does. Use who or that and your own ideas, just like before. So talk about a translator and a lawyer. Do you remember the job of the translator and the lawyer? So what are we going to use? You can use who or that to talk about these jobs. And thank you very much, my dear students. I will see you in the next English lesson. I will see what did you do in the homework.